Hi, everyone. Welcome to my Introduction to Senegal lecture. My name is Samba Kamara. I am a native of Senegal, and I am a teaching assistant professor of African American, and Diaspora Studies at UNC Chapel Hill. This video lecture is a part of the Africa 101 series initiated by UNC's African Studies Center, and it is made for the K-5 Digital Learning of Contemporary Africa project, which is funded by the Oak Foundation. The title of today's lecture is Senegal by 4. You may begin to wonder why Senegal by 4. Well, because I would like to explore Senegal from the angle of the symbolism around the number 4, because the number 4 has just been so symbolic in any way that one looks at Senegalese history, society, and politics. For example, April 4th is Senegal's Independence Day, which is a day that Senegal's first president chose to commemorate the country's independence every year, not because that is the historical day of the country's independence, which is actually on June 20th, but because he wanted to avoid celebrating independence on a rainy day. And so it begins raining in Senegal in June. Another symbolism around the figure 4 also is that Senegalese involvement in modern politics historically began with the creation of the 4 communes, or the 4 municipalities, if you will, in 1872. But also, to this date, the country has had 4 presidents. So that's another symbolism on the figure 4. And 4 Muslim brotherhoods have really been the ones that shaped Senegalese national identity and popular culture. And then throughout this talk, I will explore the urban growth of those 4 communes, and I will name them, of course, as we go. And then I will go on to discuss 4 selected architectural attractions in Senegal, 4 national dishes, and then I will talk about 4 places that you can go on to relax. So this is what I mean by Senegal, exploring Senegal by 4. Senegal is located in the westernmost tip of the African continent. It is a former French colony, therefore classified as a French or French-speaking country or a Francophone country. But the fact is that only 15 to 20% of Senegalese speak French as a first or second language. Over 80% of Senegalese speak Wolof as a first or second or third language, and which makes Wolof the country's lingua franca, this medium of communication across ethnic divides, if you will. The country's flag, as you can see, is the green, yellow, and red with a green star in the middle of the yellow strip. So Senegal is home of teranga, home of hospitality. That's the Wolof for hospitality, teranga. And just to sort of characterize the nature, the welcoming nature of the Senegalese society, the nature also of openness for visitors. Notice also when you look at this map, you know, how Gambia sort of cuts into the map of Senegal, becoming almost like the mouth of the country. Well, that's what colonization did to the map of Africa, right? So Gambia was formerly colonized by Great Britain, so English is their official language today, and Senegal's French as you can guess, as you know, dates to the country's historical or colonial connection with France. When you land in Dakar, this is what you will see. You will land in a modern airport, actually was integrated in 2017. This is one of the jewels of President Macky Sall, actually of President Abdoulaye Wade himself, who preceded Macky Sall, because Abdoulaye Wade had initiated the project. This is the Blaise Diagne International Airport. The airport is named after Blaise Diagne, who was, the first person of West African origin to be elected to the French Chamber of Deputies, and he lived between 1872 and 1934. So the airport is named after him. On these pictures, you do get a sense of what the inside of the airport looks like. So not really something very different from what you see in American airports. It's a big airport. You see inside, it's quite busy. To make your way out of the airport to downtown Dakar, you have a couple of options. You can either ride on the brand new high-speed train, which was inaugurated recently in December 2021. Or you can also, take a taxi, or you may also arrange a ride before you actually fly over to Senegal. All those are options. So now I would like to quickly situate you or to situate Senegal for us. And I would like, again, dwelling on with the number 4, I'd like to quickly situate the country on a geographical angle as well. And then I will talk about its population, and then I will share a pre-colonial map and then talk briefly about Wolof traditional society. Senegal is a Sahelian country, meaning it is located in this African region called the Sahel. The Sahel is a semi-arid region of Western and North Central Africa, extending from Senegal eastward to Sudan. It is really this strip of land or that transition zone between the arid Sahara desert that we see in yellow to the north, and the belt of humid savanna to the south. And this is important because I think it is the geography of a country that eventually determines the habitat, the crops, the economic trends, food, culture, and even art and literature, because artistic and literary creativity are human responses to nature. They are also human responses to the politics that are shaped in many ways by nature itself. So Sahelian countries include, in addition to Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, northern Nigeria, Chad and Sudan. So those are the Sahelian countries. Senegal is about 17 million people, according to the latest census by Senegal's National Census Bureau, which is called INT'L. The population is quite young. 52.1% of the population is aged under 22 years. And Senegal, again, is this country where faith really matters. And you will see that, in the urban landscape as you go. Islam is the dominant religion, which is a religion that over 94% of the people identify with. About 5% of Senegalese identify as Roman Catholics, who constitute the majority of the Christians, and then 1% of Senegalese are practitioners of indigenous faith. Senegal is ethnically very diverse, like many African countries in the post-colonial context. But the two dominant ethno-linguistic groups are the Wolof, who speak the Wolof language, or who are ethnically Wolof, who constitute 38.7%. And then you have the Halpula, 26.5%, and then the Sere, 15%, the Mandinka, 4.2%, the Jola, 4%, the Soninke, 2.3%. And there's also another minority constituting about 9.3% of the population, which is made up of European expatriates, as well as Mauritanian residents of Senegal, and this colonial minority of Lebanese who made their way from Lebanon to Senegal when they were brought over by the French colonial administration during the colonial period. Ethnicity here is very much connected to the pre-colonial, the map of Senegal's pre-colonial kingdoms. So if you look at this map here, for example, you can see the kingdoms. So this is a map of 18th century Senegal, which I borrowed from famous historian of West Africa and of Islam in Africa, David Robinson. It really pictures several pre-colonial kingdoms, including the Kingdom of Walo, Jolof, Kayor, Bawol, Saloms, and Sin. All of these are traditionally Wolof-speaking kingdoms. Of course, Sin Salum also is predominantly and traditionally a Serer-speaking kingdom, but it did have significant people that used Wolof as a medium of communication. And then we have the Futa Toro region, which is the place where many Pular speakers trace their origins from, as well as Bundu, which also included Wolof speakers there as well. But in any way, in post-colonial modern Senegal, Wolof has come to be significantly influenced by neighboring ethno-linguistic cultures, namely Serer and Pular. However, Wolof has just come to become this dominant social linguistic entity or culture that has come to shape Senegalese national identity in many ways. Wolof traditional society, since Wolof has just been so predominant in Senegalese society and culture, I think it makes sense to just look at its traditional social order. Wolof traditional society is very hierarchical, or was very hierarchical. The aristocracy at the top, which is made up of royal families that have the right to claim royal leadership. And then you have the social class that is made up of ordinary people, which in Wolof are called Badolo, a term that has now gained a new meaning. And then the last or the third social class is made of the artisans, which includes craftsmen on the one hand, and the griots on the other. Craftsmen includes the woodworkers, who are called Laube, which you find among Wolof, but you also find them in other ethnic groups as well. The leather workers, who are called Ude in Wolof, and then the goldsmith or blacksmith or ironsmith, whatever you choose to call them. They're also what we call Tug, etc., etc. The griots, they constitute this portion of the Ñeño social group that are known for their art of eloquence. They are the masters of the verbal poetry. And their poetry, which is oral poetry traditionally, is made of praise poetry, right? Which consists mostly of praise songs that are composed in honor of their patrons. And their patrons tend to be members of the two upper social classes, meaning the ordinary people, the Badolo, and the aristocracy. So today, while post-colonial modernity and modernization and globalization have really brought change to the traditional Wolof social order, this social order itself still continues to shape social relationships between people, between Wolof people. And again, since we have talked about the griot, which is why I highlighted them in red, the griot really is an important figure. He or she can be identified as, the precursor or the pioneer of musical production in West Africa in general, and in Wolof society in particular. In pre-colonial Senegal or in pre-colonial West Africa, the griot was not just a praise singer selling his talent for money. He was an important royal figure, and he served as an advisor to the king. The griot are traditionally known to be poets, historians, advisors to the royalty, spokesperson of the kingdom, diplomats, because they mediated diplomatic negotiations between their home kingdom and other kingdoms. They were also served as interpreters, translators, musicians, composers, teachers, warriors, witnesses, etc. So they really served a lot of professional roles in pre-colonial Senegal. Now, we get to talk about the four communes, again, dwelling on our driving thread of the number 4. The four communes, or the four municipalities that I mentioned, include Dakar, and then Gorée, Rufisque, and Saint Louis. So to explore really Senegal further, I'll zoom on these four communes, or municipal villages, as I like to call them. And how did they come to be accorded such a unique status? Well, in 1872, about 2 years after the establishment of the Third French Republic, a French colonial law gave French citizenship to all inhabitants of Senegal's four communes. So as early as 1872, the Senegalese could vote. They could choose their mayor through election, of course. So they were, compared to the rest of the members of the French colonial African empire, they really began very early, taking part in politics. So the four communes are really where Senegalese indigents began to participate in modern politics. Now, each one of these communes has followed its own urban growth, path of urban growth, and we'll just look at what one can see in them today. Let's begin with Dakar, which is the capital city of Senegal. You can see here the presidential palace, and on my right-hand side, you see an old architectural representation here, which is actually a French colonial garrison, which was used for French defense against its, other colonial competitors. So it's interesting to look at the contrast here, right? So this picture is taken from Gorée Island, which we'll talk a little bit more about soon. So you see this contrast between the garrison's colonial look and Dakar's skyline. So there is a distance of, a little over 3 miles between Gorée Island and Dakar. Staying in Dakar, you can stay in the coolest hotels in the world, right? Dakar is a cosmopolitan place, very welcoming, very diverse. You can find, all kind of hotels that you're looking for, right? At all rates, of course. And this is an example of a very modern hotel, Yas, which was recently inaugurated, providing a nice ocean view here. Moving around Dakar, you can use the state buses, the Dakar Demdik buses. You can also use taxi if you're really in a hurry, because the bus lines may be a little bit slow. On the left-hand side, you see a picture of the famous, signature Senegalese car rapide, which translates in English, express bus. But trust me, this is the slowest bus you will ever ride in Senegal. But if you really want to get to know the Senegalese people, this is your to-go place. Of course, you have to take some on the right-hand side, you see a picture of a busy market street, and this is Sandaga, which is the busiest or one of the busiest urban open-air urban markets in Senegal, in Dakar. And this is what it looks like on a regular, daytime market activity. Dakar is this city also where faith matters, as I said earlier, like in the rest of Senegal. On the left-hand side, the picture shows, the famous Cathedral of Notre-Dame des Victoires, Our Lady of Victories, which was built back in 1924 and consecrated in 1936. In 2001, that's actually where Senghor's, and you remember Senghor is Senegal's first president, that's where his funeral was held. And on the right-hand side, you see Massalikul Jinan, the beautiful mosque, of the Muridiya, built by members of the Muridiya Muslim Brotherhood, inaugurated in 2019. Massalikul Jinan is almost a replica of the great mosque of Touba, and Touba, which is the spiritual capital of the Muridiya Muslim Brotherhood, which is outside Dakar in a different town. Number 2, Gorée Island, which is this historic site that no visitors of Senegal misses. So during the Atlantic slave trade, Gorée was really a transit island for enslaved Africans. So enslaved Africans were held captives there. That's where they were prepared and before they are shipped to the Americas. So they were held in a place called the House of Slaves, which is now a museum. You'll see it once you get to the island. Just a bit more historical context here. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to reach Senegalese coast in the mid-15th century, and they settled in the Gorée Island. The French, who initially came to trade goods and slaves, ended up settling for colonization. So they established a fort in St. Louis, which came to be the first capital of French West Africa. They created that fort, in St. Louis in 1659, and they drove out the Dutch who had replaced, the Portuguese. They drove out the Dutch of Gorée Island. So the French ended up, creating the colony of Senegal, rivaling with the British, who controlled British Gambia, if you will. When you travel to Gorée Island, you will take a ferry, the one that you are seeing here on the picture. So you're gonna get to the nice port of Dakar, and that's where you will board the ferry, and then you make that 5-kilometer sail to Gorée Island. And you see the Gorée Island right there, view of its coastline. On the left-hand side is a picture of the House of Slaves, which is now the museum that I was talking about. And in there, you can see, remnants that are kept as part of the museum collections. So you'll see remnants of slave objects or artifacts, including the shackles that you see pictured here on the slide, and many other objects. So there's a museum curator who will guide you through the museum and the house itself once you get there. Number 3 is Rufisque, which is again third commune. It's located 1 hour ride from downtown Dakar. And it's the home turf of the Lebu people, right? So I like to show this picture again, which comes from the collection of Forcier, who is a early 1900s French photographer who had traveled to Senegal and had taken these very interesting pictures of the 4 communes. And so the bags that you see in the picture, they are peanut bags. And Senegal, again, was a major peanut producing colony. Still, even after colonization, is a major peanut producing country. So the Lebu people are traditionally fishermen, and their life and culture revolves around ocean life and seafood. A picture of coastal Rufisque that reminds you of the French architecture. For some of you who've been to New Orleans, Gorée Island, St. Louis, as we'll talk about later, will remind you of that American Louisiana city. Another signature cultural element of Lebu, of Rufisque, is Nup, which is a signature Lebu ritual, which is a healing ritual, right? It is practiced at the ocean shore, and it is an exorcising ritual meant to really, free a person who is possessed by a spirit. So DUP really is a performance that, attests to pre-colonial indigenous practices still surviving in Senegal. It involves a lot of sacrifice, drumming, dance, verbal poetry, and today the ritual has come to influence Senegalese popular music, namely mbalax. Lake RETBA, or the Pink Lake, is one of Senegal's attractions in Rufisque, which is, and so it's the lake where many locals extract the salt, from the bottom of the lake, using that salt to conserve fish or for transformation, also for other purposes. The lake, takes its pink color from a particular algae called a saline algae that is attracted by the salt. St. Louis is, we talked about St. Louis, which is this first capital of French West Africa, and it's remained the capital until 1902, which is when the capital was transferred to Dakar. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, since 2000. And so is Gore Island, which I believe was actually had become a World Heritage Site in the late 1970s, maybe probably around 1978. And St. Louis is popular for the Faidherbe Bridge. You know, it's home to the St. Louis Jazz Festival, and is also the home to many famous Senegalese cultural artists. You know, it is also home to a popular fishing tradition. St. Louis is this three-island city, and it is really made up of three islands, you know, connected by bridges. One of those is the Faidherbe Bridge that you can see here from an aerial view. And on the right-hand side, you see a picture, a street picture of St. Louis. It shows the balconies that I like to talk about, right? So these are signature colonial architectural features that you find in New Orleans, again, if you make it to that Louisiana city. Anyway, so another element worth pointing out, I think, is the 2020 controversy around Louis Faidherbe's statue. So there was this wave of protest against colonial statues standing in the world, including the US, Great Britain, France, parts of France, you know, and in Africa as well, South Africa and Senegal. So in Senegal, there was a large, so the Louis Faidherbe's statue that you see here, actually, this is after it had been temporarily removed. The statue was standing in a popular square in St. Louis. So the statue was brought down in protest against the history of Louis Faidherbe in Senegal. He was, you know, he was documented as a colonial governor who had killed many Senegalese rulers, had burnt many villages. And so the bringing down of his monument or his statue was part of a popular interest in rewriting the country's national colonial history. Moving on now to another symbolism around the figure, around number 4, is the fact that Senegal has had 4 presidents so far. Léopold Sédar Senghor, whom we see here on the picture during the 1966 Festival of Negro Arts, the World Festival of Negro Arts. That's when this picture was taken. Senghor was really the founding father of, you know, Senegal Socialist Party, which has been able to remain on power for over a quarter of a century. Senghor was a man of culture, really. You know, he was a former member of the prestigious French Academy of Arts and Letters. He was actually one of those who drafted the Constitution of the Fifth French Republic. And so that's how French he was, even though he was the, you know, the first president of the Senegalese country. So he was Senegal's first president, who also happened to be a Catholic, who was elected by a predominantly Muslim electorate. So that's how deep a culture of democracy has been, you know, in Senegal. So, and then Abdou Diouf is the second president of the country, who was really the political heir of Léopold Sédar Senghor, and who consolidated the stronghold of the Socialist Party in Senegalese politics until 2000, when he lost an election to Abdoulaye Wade. Abdoulaye Wade is the country's third president. When he came to power, he was really the hope. He embodied our hope, the hope of the Senegalese youth. He came to power with a very Pan-African vision, or a neo-Pan-African vision, if I may call it that. So he was one of the one of the think tanks of the NEPAD organization, which is the organization of this new partnership for African development. You know, so he also initiated a lot of construction projects in Senegal and building museums and monuments. But by 2011, there was a lot of corruption and mismanagement. cases that were brought up and that ended up leading to his impopularity, and that produced the famous national protest against him, eventually leading to his demise, and to his loss of the elections of 2012. Macky Sall is the fourth president of Senegal. You see him. I showed you earlier the picture of Abdou Diouf with President Bill Clinton, who had visited Senegal in 1998, I believe. And here is a picture of Barack Obama picturing with President Macky Sall during his 2008 visit of Africa. Senegal was one of those countries that he chose to visit. Four major Muslim brotherhoods have really shaped Senegalese popular culture and Senegalese national identity, really. And those include the Tijaniya Muslim Brotherhood, and the mosque that you see on the picture is standing in Tivaouane, which is one of the spiritual capitals of Tijaniya in Senegal. And this is the mosque El Hajj Malik Sy with its golden domes, as you can see. And then there's Muridiya, Qadiriya, and the Lion Muslim Brotherhoods. There's a lot more to say about this, but we'll have to go faster. And four musical genres. Those include sabar drumming, which is really sort of a percussion music composed by a male ensemble, and usually women dance to sabar drumming, but now men do as well. And then there's the mbalax music genre, which is really the signature musical genre of Senegal. And then there's a set of several traditional musical genres that are ethnically diverse and distinct. And lastly, there's the hip hop music genre, which is really very vivid and present in Senegal. Actually, the first successful hip hop group in Africa is Senegalese, and that's PBS. And this is a picture of Youssou N'Dour, who is the flag bearer of mbalax music in the world, really the one who made mbalax popular as well. So he gave a couple of concerts at UNC. The latest one took place in 2020. Sorry. These are the members of the Yanamar activist group, which is led by rappers. In 2012, they played an important role in the toppling, not in the toppling of Abdoulaye Wade, just in his ousting, so to speak. Four architectural sites that you don't want to miss are the African Renaissance Monument, built in 2010. It's this 49-meter tall bronze statue sitting on top of one of the twin hills known as the Colline de Mamel in Wakam, in the outskirts of Dakar. You don't also want to miss the Museum of Black Civilizations, which was inaugurated in 2018. And you may want to take a look at the Great Mosque of Touba, whose replica I mentioned was erected recently in Dakar. So the Mosque of Touba was initiated its construction in 1932 and ended in 1963. But this mosque has been constantly expanded and renovated. But also another site of architectural interest is Diamniadio City. This is really a brand new city coming out of earth, in Dakar, about 30 kilometers away from Dakar of car ride. So it includes several attractions, including, the West Africa UN headquarters that is being built there, Dakar Arena, the Abdoulaye Wade Soccer Stadium, where recently Senegal won an important soccer game against, Egypt, earning them their ticket to the Soccer World Cup, which will be held in Qatar, in the Middle East. Senegal is also a nation of soccer. Recently in 2022, Senegal is the champion, won the championship, the soccer championship, the male soccer championship to be specific. And so this is a picture of the stadium that you see there. Signature foods, signature dishes include chebujen, rice and fish, yassa, So Chebujen just made it into the list of immaterial world heritages to the UNESCO. Yassa is another Senegalese national dish, and Mafe and Chere, Senegalese couscous. But restaurants in Senegal also offer Western style seafood and other Western types of dishes also of your preference. 4 places where you want to relax, I just want to name a few, 4 of them again to stick to my number 4. Sali is one of them. It's a beautiful coast in Boer. Gore Island, the Voile d'Or Beach, the Pullman Hotel also offers a nice ocean view beach, and, Hotel Esplanade, which is a cool place that you don't want to miss. With that, I welcome you to Senegal again, and I really tell you Dalal ak jàmm ci Senegal, which means welcome to Senegal. Thank you for watching.